The 15th century was a transformative period in global economic history, where distinct regions developed unique economic structures that would influence their trajectories for centuries to come. Throughout Asia, Europe, Africa, and even the emerging cultures in the Americas, diverse economic advancements and political transformations marked the era. Scholars like Immanuel Wallerstein have identified this century as crucial in the transition to what he describes as the modern world system, where various regions integrated economically in different ways. By examining the Ottoman Empire, Ming Dynasty China, the Mali Empire, and Western Europe in the 15th century, and comparing their historical prominence to their present-day economic states, we gain insight into how economic power ebbs and flows, often reshaping the global landscape. The Ottoman Empire, a strategic trade power. In the 15th century, the Ottoman Empire rose to prominence by strategically controlling critical trade routes that linked Europe and Asia. The empire's reach extended across the Middle East, North Africa, and parts of Southeast Europe, positioning it as a major hub in global commerce. Historians such as Halil Inalcik and Stanford Shaw have explored how the Ottomans leveraged their geopolitical position to facilitate and tax trade. For example, they controlled access to the Silk Road, a vital trade route for spices, silks, and other luxury goods coming from Asia. The capture of Constantinople in 1453 transformed the city into a central hub for trade and marked a key turning point for the empire, symbolizing not only its military prowess but also its economic might. The Ottomans implemented advanced fiscal policies to maximize revenue from trade. They established efficient taxation systems, such as customs duties on merchants passing through key cities. By encouraging trade, the Ottomans created a vibrant economy that relied on income from commerce rather than agricultural surplus alone, which had been the main economic driver in earlier Middle Eastern empires. This structure created a thriving cosmopolitan culture where merchants from various backgrounds, Armenians, Greeks, and Arabs, contributed to the empire's prosperity. Over time, the empire also developed a sophisticated manufacturing sector, producing textiles, ceramics, and weapons that were traded across the Mediterranean. However, modern-day Turkey, the successor to the Ottoman Empire, plays a much different economic role. With the rise of globalized trade and transportation networks, the traditional overland routes have lost much of their importance. While Turkey remains strategically located, its modern economy, though diversified, is regionally focused and cannot exert the same influence over global commerce as the Ottoman Empire once did. Instead, Turkey's economy is interwoven with Europe and the Middle East, and it functions as a bridge in a different way. Though Turkey has tried to leverage its strategic location through organizations such as NATO and by seeking membership in the EU, its economic power is relatively modest compared to the Ottoman zenith. This contrast highlights how technological advancements in transportation and communication have reshaped the role of geographic location in global trade and economic influence. Ming Dynasty China, the center of global trade. The 15th century Ming Dynasty, 1368 to 1644, was one of the world's most advanced economies and a center of global trade. The Ming era, marked by centralization and agricultural productivity, established China as a self-sufficient and economically powerful nation. Scholars such as Kenneth Pomeranz and Mark Elvin argue that the Ming dynasty's economy was notable for its commercial agriculture, particularly in the fertile Yangtze River Delta, which became a center for silk and tea production. The Ming government also invested in infrastructure, such as the Grand Canal, which facilitated the transport of goods within China and helped unify the economy. The Ming government initially promoted international trade, particularly during the reign of the Yongle Emperor, who commissioned the famous treasure voyages led by Admiral Zheng He. These expeditions, reaching as far as the Middle East and East Africa, demonstrated China's naval prowess and its economic capacity to undertake such large-scale explorations. The voyages brought back valuable trade goods and fostered diplomatic ties, solidifying China's position as a center of global commerce. However, after the death of the Yongle Emperor, the Ming government adopted a more isolationist stance, banning maritime trade and dismantling much of the fleet. Historians debate the reasons for this shift, with some attributing it to the high cost of maintaining the fleet and the desire to focus resources on defending against northern nomads. Modern China, in contrast, has embraced global trade and economic interdependence. Since the economic reforms of 1978, China has transitioned from a self-sufficient economy to a globally integrated one. Today, China is the world's largest exporter, with its economy centered around manufacturing, technology and finance rather than agriculture. This shift has brought China unprecedented economic growth, and its GDP is now the second largest in the world. Unlike the Ming dynasty, which operated within a largely self-contained economic model, modern China is deeply involved in global supply chains. By establishing trade agreements and investing in foreign infrastructure through the Belt and Road Initiative, China has positioned itself as a key player in the global economy. This transformation from a historically isolationist and self-reliant economy to a global manufacturing powerhouse highlights the adaptability and resilience of Chinese economic strategy over centuries. The Mali Empire, a wealth of resources and trade networks. The Mali Empire, established in the 13th century and reaching its peak in the 14th and 15th centuries, was one of the wealthiest regions in Africa, largely due to its abundant natural resources, particularly gold. Under rulers like Mansa Musa, Mali's influence extended across West Africa, and it became a key player in the trans-Saharan trade routes. These routes connected the empire to North Africa and the Mediterranean, enabling it to trade gold, salt, ivory, and other valuable goods. Mansa Musa's famous pilgrimage to Mecca, during which he distributed vast amounts of gold, showcased the empire's wealth and underscored its economic power. Historians such as Ralph Austin and John Hunwick have documented how Mali's economic system depended on both internal trade and its connections to distant markets. Mali's economy was supported by a highly developed social and political structure. Centres like Timbuktu and Gao not only served as trade hubs but also became renowned for their intellectual and cultural significance. Timbuktu, for instance, attracted scholars, traders and artisans from across the Islamic world, becoming a centre for education and religious scholarship. Mali's wealth allowed for investment in these urban centres, where goods from across Africa and beyond were traded. However, this wealth was primarily resource-based, reliant on the high demand for gold, and as trade routes changed, so did the empire's prosperity. Today, the region that was once the Mali Empire, encompassing modern Mali and parts of neighbouring West African countries, faces significant economic challenges. Despite possessing valuable resources, including gold, these countries struggle with poverty, political instability, and underdeveloped infrastructure. The colonial era disrupted West Africa's economic networks, redirecting trade towards European-controlled ports and weakening traditional trade routes. As a result, modern Mali and its neighbours face barriers to economic development that their 15th century counterparts did not. Global trade no longer relies on trans-Saharan routes, as technological advancements in transportation have shifted economic activity to coastal regions. This shift from a wealthy empire to a struggling region demonstrates how changes in trade routes, colonial disruptions, and shifting demand for natural resources can drastically alter economic fortunes over time. Western Europe, from feudal societies to economic hegemony. Western Europe in the 15th century was a region in transition. It was emerging from the feudal system, which had defined its economic structure for centuries. During this period, Europe began to witness the early stages of a shift from agrarian economies to a more commercial and trade-focused economy. Urban centres like Venice, Florence and Antwerp became hubs for trade, banking and commerce, laying the groundwork for the capitalist economies that would dominate Europe in the coming centuries. Historians such as Fernand Braudel have highlighted the role of these city-states and merchant networks in fostering Europe's economic rise. These cities were particularly active in Mediterranean trade, connecting Western Europe with the Byzantine Empire, the Ottoman Empire and beyond. The 15th century also marked the beginning of European maritime exploration. Portugal and Spain, driven by a desire to find new trade routes to Asia and expand Christian influence, began voyages that would ultimately lead to the discovery of the Americas. This age of exploration allowed European countries to access wealth, resources and land on a scale previously unimaginable. This shift fundamentally changed Europe's economic trajectory as it transitioned from a fragmented region with limited influence to a collection of powerful states with global ambitions. The wealth generated from colonial ventures funded Europe's industrialization, setting the stage for it to become the economic powerhouse of the 19th and 20th centuries. Today, Western Europe remains one of the most prosperous regions globally, with high-income economies and advanced technological sectors. The industrial and colonial expansions that began in the centuries following the 15th century cemented Europe's economic dominance. Germany, France, and the United Kingdom, for example, are now some of the wealthiest countries in the world, with economies based on technology, finance, and advanced manufacturing. This economic shift from a feudal agrarian society to an industrial and now post-industrial region demonstrates the transformative impact of technological advancement, globalization, and colonial wealth on Europe's development. The historical transition underscores how Europe's 15th century economic roots evolved into the modern-day global financial centers we see today. Economic power over time. The economic evolution of the Ottoman Empire, Ming Dynasty China, the Mali Empire, and Western Europe reveals distinct paths shaped by geographical advantages, political strategies, and shifting trade routes. In the 15th century, each of these regions held significant power within their respective spheres, contributing to global economic activity in unique ways. The Ottomans controlled critical trade routes. The Ming Dynasty maintained self-sufficiency with limited international engagement. The Mali Empire thrived on resource-based trade, and Western Europe began a transformative period of exploration and expansion. Today, these regions have shifted significantly in economic power and global influence. Technological advancements and modern transportation have reduced the importance of geographical choke points once dominated by the Ottoman Empire. China's role as a global manufacturing hub starkly contrasts with the Ming Dynasty's self-sufficient economy. The West African region, once enriched by Mali's control of gold, now faces economic challenges in a globalized market. And Western Europe, through a series of historical shifts, has transformed into one of the world's most prosperous and industrialized regions, shaped by its colonial past and technological development. The nature of changing economic power. Historical cycles reveal that economic power is fluid and often shifts due to factors such as technological advancements, changes in trade routes, and geopolitical developments. No single empire or nation has maintained unchallenged economic dominance indefinitely. As Paul Kennedy argues in The Rise and Fall of the Great Powers, economic supremacy is directly tied to political and military strength, both of which can be affected by overextension, competition, and changing global dynamics. For example, the British Empire, once an economic superpower, faced decline after World War II as the US and other nations rose to prominence. Similarly, the Dutch Republic's decline in the 18th century as a financial power was influenced by military challenges and competition from rising European powers. Today, emerging economies like China and India are challenging the global economic order, underscoring that economic power is rarely permanent. The rise of these nations parallels historical cycles where empires like the Ottomans, the Ming, and the European colonial powers once held influence, only to see shifts over time. Understanding these cycles reminds us that economic dominance is often fleeting, and modern powers may experience similar transformations in the future.